At work, I'm finally getting traction on like trying to move things towards a more like traditional, like the DevOps for data science way.
Awesome.
It's a long, slow process,
For sure.
but I don't know,
That's very cool. Oops.
the current thing is trying to get them, they're willing to give Azure DevOps a try, and I'm like, please just let us use GitHub Enterprise from the start, because when Azure DevOps inevitably dies in like 5 to 10 years,
Inevitably dies.
like if you Google Azure DevOps, everyone's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't use this if you're starting new. And then you Google like GitHub workflow to Azure DevOps pipeline converter, and everyone's like, why would you do this? And then there's like 4 tools that do GitHub or do pipelines to GitHub workflows, and none that do it the other way around. So I'm like, clearly there's no support here. We should just, but we'll see.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and get started because I think the that conversation fits in well with this chapter. And so for those of you on YouTube, this is the DevOps for Data Science Book Club from R4DS, and we are going to be looking at chapter 17, which is about enterprise networking. So this chapter, I thought it was one of the, like all of these in this enterprise section are good things to think about, where for me, it's stuff that I've like run into, or you know, I've had some of these issues. I've had just whatever situations where it's hard to see the good side of it. You can only see that it makes my life annoying. And so having the chapter where it's like, no, but here's what you can get out of it, and why it's, you know, why it's good, and like how to fix things. It was nice. So I pulled out these 4 learning objectives that we want to understand enterprise networking terminology. We want to be able to list some benefits of private networks and proxies. And then we want to recognize issues related to inbound proxies, and that includes like how to go about fixing them, and recognize issues related to outbound proxies. And that's, I mean, you know, there are other little things, but they kind of fall into those 4 buckets. So let's go ahead and get started. So the terminology that he goes into, you know, overall, we're talking about private networks, where that's a network that communicates with wider internet via proxies. On AWS, that's a VPC, or virtual private cloud. And I tried to follow the protocol that he introduced way back when, of think of it as the abbreviation when it's on AWS, because what it stands for doesn't really matter. It's a VPC, because they have, I mean, in this case, it actually is pretty close to what it actually means, but often those abbreviations are meaningless. And so it, you know, communicates via proxies. What does that mean? Well, you've got inbound proxies, and he points out that that's more formally a reverse proxy. And that's a server that touches the public network. You know, it can see the internet, and it routes traffic into the private network. And then on the other end, you have an outbound proxy, or a forward proxy, and that's a server that, you know, can touch the public internet, and it routes traffic out of the private network. I have worked with VPCs, I've worked with proxies, and just having this clear breakdown of what each thing is doing, I found really helpful. Even though this is stuff I feel like I kind of knew, but I didn't formally know all this stuff. So I don't know, I found this helpful just to center everything in my mind. Have you, you know, what are your guys' experience with, I mean, I guess Gus had some stories already, but just in general with working with private networks?
I have absolutely no experience with networking at all. I agree with you that like I loved having the chapter just sort of say like, this is what these things are. You know, before you go to Stack Overflow and get overwhelmed with people telling you about TCP, IPs, and all that stuff, just like know what this is.
No, yeah, the really low level. Because I feel like I've gone like several steps past this many times without just sitting back and going, okay, but what are the pieces and what are they doing? So I found that really helpful. How about you,
And
Gus?
that's where it can be,
Oh, go ahead.
dangerous, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I currently have Nginx set up as my like inbound home proxy for stuff. And like I'm at the point where like I know just enough to get myself in trouble and know that I'm probably getting myself in trouble, but not enough to identify like, am I actually doing anything really dangerous? So just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna stick with the logic that if I had a random open port exposed to the internet, I would have been DDoSed already. So
Oh,
You
yeah,
have
there
to
is
always
some.
assume that you're important enough that someone wants to DDoS you.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
like
Um,
it's
yeah.
and then just I constantly hit the outbound proxy at work and it's a struggle. For some reason
We'll
they
talk.
seem
Oh, go ahead.
they have like the weirdest network setup, and it doesn't help because I can access things in a web browser, but when I try and like curl something, it fails. And so IT goes, oh, look, you can access the website, it's fine. And I'm like, wait, no. So
For outbound, especially. I mean, we'll talk
yeah.
about that, but that's extra special. It's funny because at my old job, we had one main like data science server that I was the admin for, but I didn't know what I was doing. And so like I had Nginx set up on it, but we were in a VPC. So like in theory, I could have elevated that a level and like made my life a lot easier. Like, hey, network guys, take care of this stuff for me and send it to these ports on the box. And so it was, that's a case where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like now I get it more. That said, there are cases I'm sure where you want to do the multi-level. But man, it almost certainly would have been easier to just have that traffic route directly to, just the RStudio port, basically.
Yep.
It's like, oh, okay. We also we might have had Shiny Server on that same box. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I set it up. But still, all of that, like that routing would have been relatively easy if I knew what I was doing.
Doing Shiny server and trying to figure that out is definitely on my list of things to learn so that when I am doing things like there's some things I want to do at home with a Shiny server and then things I want to do at work and sort of being able to make my case and they go, okay, where would this live? And right now I just sort of go, we can figure that out later.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I did it, but it's not that bad. I do remember for some of the stuff we were working on, increasing the session timeout from the default on Shiny server was very helpful. But other than that, I think just following the instructions was pretty straightforward. I can't remember what else we had. I mean, we were able to set it up through Nginx. It wasn't a big deal to do. And that was a million years ago. So it's probably easier now. Yeah, some of the settings are kind of assuming more traffic. And so if there hasn't been traffic in a while, it like kills the server, not kills, but it shuts down the global process. And in our cases, like, it'd be easier to just keep that global process running much longer so we don't have to redo the startup crunching. And because people, there aren't enough people using it. But anyway, so that kind of stuff. But yeah, this baseline was really helpful to me. All right, so if I select the right window, don't know why my keyboard's not working on it, but all right. So he went into some benefits of private networks. the main point is that those proxies are the only things that are touching the outside world. So anything you have to deal with, you can deal with at those proxies. You don't have to like worry about closing specific ports on the things inside of the network, because they only kind of like those ports only kind of exist, like they're only reachable by the proxies. And so the outside world can't get to them unless your proxies have a problem. So, that's the main thing. It's easier, like if you have your data science server and you want to switch to a different server, you just do it at the proxy. You don't have to like change the what this this URL refers to. You don't have to update the DNS and all that, because the proxy is the thing that is routing that. So that's nice. Likewise, if you need to send things, this port goes to this server, or this goes to this other port on this server. One thing I don't think he mentioned, but it means that you can use the default ports for like RStudio and Shiny server. And then it doesn't, the proxies can just go to those ports. It can say, okay, if this comes in on 5757, we actually need it to go to 8787 on the RStudio server. So that kind of thing is nice to deal with. And then, you can block traffic to or from specific unwanted sources, or you can block everything and then only allow specific waitlists. So, source by source. And you can optionally just have like authentication at the front there, and then pass tokens or headers or things like that along to the different boxes inside, or not. Like, the things inside don't have to worry about authentication. In some cases, you can just do authentication at the proxy. Does that line up with what you guys saw? Have any thoughts around that? It's okay if you don't. All right, we will move on. All right, that one, the keyboard actually worked. So, and then he goes into like inbound and outbound proxies and some specifics of what they're doing and what you can watch out for. And a lot of the idea here is like knowing what to go to your IT with, like saying, hey, I can't do this. I think there's a problem with our, my communication with our inbound proxy or whatever. So it was helpful to know or to see these things. So the first thing is to just, think that the inbound proxy is handling any time that you on your laptop are connecting to the server, or anyone else, but specifically in your, your usage would be you going into that server. And also anything else like a website hitting that server or different things like that. But the normal use case that you're going to work with as a data scientist would be your laptop trying to connect to like RStudio or to Shiny. A lot of times there will be upload or download file size limits configured through the proxy. So that can be something that you'll notice if you're trying to, if it is a situation where you like work sometimes on your personal laptop and sometimes on the server, and you need to transfer large data sets in between them, that might be something to run into. And also there can be timeouts on those, both those and sessions. So things to watch out for. If, uploads and downloads from you to the server, or from the server to you fail or cut off early, or your session keeps ending, you have to log back in a bunch more than you would expect to. That's a sign that something could be weird in the inbound proxy. And special cases to watch out for are WebSockets. That a lot of technologies like Shiny and Streamlit use WebSockets to keep the connection open and to communicate back and forth between the browser and the server. And newer proxies just deal with that. Older proxies might not. So, if Shiny specifically is breaking, that could be a sign that there's a WebSocket issue. And again, just this, like the checklist is, I find, super helpful. All right. And then we'll see if we have other things to talk about, because this is the last section of this chapter here at quarter after. Outbound proxies. So that's from like the server to the wider internet generally. it's that should say rarer. It's more rare to have a whole bunch set up here. Gus is dealing with it, but a lot of times people are a lot more lenient about what you can go out to. And something I found interesting is I had heard about air-gapped servers a lot. I thought it always literally meant like physically not on the internet, but apparently a lot of times people talk about a server being air-gapped, and that just means that they've got an outbound proxy that's pretty strong. But it can even let some things through, and I'm like, but that's not what air-gapped is supposed to mean. So I thought that was interesting. And then so things that you can that will be impacted with outbound proxies, downloading packages. That's why our Studio Package Manager exists, that you can have inside of your proxy. You have this internal package manager. There's an approved list of packages that are on that package manager, and then you can download from that. You can also you can have that without there being strong outbound rules. There can be good reasons for that, but that's there is a product to deal with that. Accessing external data from your server, for example, hitting APIs could be affected. Updating system libraries. So if you have if you're working with Arrow, there's something to install on your system that beyond just the package or things like that. He talks about hopefully your IT has a plan at least for this, because otherwise the servers don't work. So hopefully they can, they'll know, we'll be able to help you there. And then software licensing, that some software might ping a server to check that you have a license, and generally they have systems for dealing with air-gapped servers, but you need to do that. And so that's one where if you have this software, it's supposed to be licensed and you think you have it all set up, but it keeps telling you that you don't have a license, your license is expired, something like that, that would be a case that probably means there's an outbound proxy issue and you should talk to, well, I like that he pointed out, look at the documentation of that software and see, I mean, I'm realizing if you can look at the documentation, because if they're blocking it, you might not be able to see it, depending on I guess you probably can from your machine. Anyway, look at the documentation and know what they say to do, so you can take that to IT instead of just saying, hey, this is breaking, help. That you can search, specifically search for air-gapped or proxy or things like that in their help and try to find how to do that. So again, not a lot of material, but very dense with useful things, I think. And also he points out that a lot of times, your IT will be okay with it. Even if they have, by default, they block everything. If you're going to, CRAN, and it's hey, I just have to be able to go to CRAN. The work I'm doing, sometimes I need a brand new package. Can I do that? And here's what CRAN is, and here's their review policies and all this. That might get you to, they might just add CRAN or a specific CRAN to their whitelist. Something I saw recently pointed out is that evidently CRAN isn't that big relative or in the grand scheme of things. So setting up your own CRAN is actually viable if your IT is hey, no, we can't open that up. Say, okay, then can you set up a mirror of CRAN? I can't remember the actual size, but even though it's 16,000 packages, most of those are very small. And so he didn't mention that, but that's another option, is you might be able to pull CRAN inside of the firewall. Now that server that has CRAN on it would have to have some sort of rules to be able to go out to CRAN, but only that server would, is the point. Yeah, so that's the chapter. I don't know, was there anything else, especially Gus, that this chapter did for you?
I don't know. It's it's the difference between me doing networking for fun and routing everything through the pie hole and then making sure everything syncs up, but then making that play nice so I can use WireGuard to remote in and then make it so that I can see my things from WireGuard versus I'm just trying to like use package down.
Yep.
So like there's two very different sets here. I guess hoping for a little bit more of like the how networking, not necessarily why networking.
That's fair. I think his idea is this isn't the book for that. Like,
Yeah.
he goes into a basic level of it in the section that we just finished. But if you want to do like enterprise networking, which is effectively what you're doing at home, like even though it's at home, so if you want to do that, there are other books for you to consult.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see, wanting more. I like I said, I found it helpful to kind of know what to look for, which pieces are likely inbound, which pieces are outbound, all that. So I do have the experience right now that I'm doing some contract work for a company that I haven't noticed any outbound issues yet, but they definitely have inbound proxy that they have their system of how they deal with some things, and it's fine. But there's a whole situation, or there's all that to deal with. And then actually another company that I've worked with, that one, it's a very small company and a lot of stuff is more like hand rolled. And I think that I've already found places where I'm like, oh, I can help them out the next time I do a contract with them, because I understand this terminology where they're just reading things on the internet and setting it up too. They don't really have much of an IT person. So having, in that case, what you're looking for, Gus, would definitely be more helpful. But again, at least knowing the terminology, it helps with going to read more things. So like, I feel like I can read AWS documentation and understand what I'm reading a lot better now after reading this chapter. So, all right. No, go ahead.
There's also, I forget okay, I think Cloudflare calls it Cloudflare Tunnel, or maybe it's Cloudflare Relay, but for things that don't have static IPs, ways to access, because if it doesn't have a static IP, you can't use a reverse proxy. So then how do you get to it? And so you essentially end up working with these relay servers but then your data is going somewhere. So it has to be somewhere you trust.
Right.
And that's, some people even do it themselves. They'll set up like a VPS on some like third party, like no name, like we only accept Bitcoin kind of company. They'll set one up there and then it'll relay everything back and forth. But
okay. Yeah. All right. So the only things left are chapters 18 and 19. I was trying to look over in chat. I know that Ahmed said that he would like to take 18, or he said, I want to try to catch up and then sign up for one of the last two chapters, or he said 3 chapters, but I don't know if that's happening. So I will not be here next weekend. I'm going to try to get it squared away because, there are only like 3.5 of us right now. So, but if it's just the 2 of you, as long as if one of you can take it, or if Ahmed is available and he can take it, I strongly encourage you to go ahead and meet, and then I'll watch the video, and then just one chapter after that. But that said, if neither of you can take it and Ahmed can't take it, then okay, we'll have to skip a week. I will, but so the 13th, actually, it's coming up soon because that's when Kevin is talking about the project that he and I have been working on. And then the 20th, theoretically, we will finish. So I will.
I'm out on the 20th.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
my sister is graduating from college.
Okay.
Mm,
I mean, we'll continue to discuss in Slack. If we have to skip, we have to skip. But I always prefer to keep going because otherwise it can fizzle, and we're almost done. So let's not let it fizzle out.
I don't know how much this fits in, but like if you guys are flexible on time, I can find time, but I don't know how that fits in with all the other book clubs and stuff.
I very, very much prefer not to do that. It is very painful to deal with that. So I would rather skip. Now, like we can do it by like a half hour. But more than that, actually, yeah, we've got a club not immediately after this one, but an hour after that. So that gets really dicey. But yeah, if we have to, we can skip, but we'll talk about it in the chat and I'll make the call on Thursday if we haven't sorted it out before then.
I guess put me for 18 for now.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I would obviously prefer if there were more people to have discussions, but like if it's just going to be like if the goal is to just like get it done and have it recorded, then I can go with that in mind.
Well, and like the two of you can discuss it.
Right.
Last week, Gus and I had a great chat about the open source data science in the enterprise and things vaguely related to that. So as long as there are two, like that's if there's only one, then no, like don't just record the material into the void. I don't think that's worthwhile. But as long as there are two, I think we should go.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No,
All right.
thank you
I
for
will see.
presenting.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you, for being here and discussing. I will see you all. Well, I'll see you on the channel, and then I'll see you in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I guess. All right. Bye.
See ya.